Hello, we are now on chapter 12, and this is markups based on cost. Here's some terminology that we need to know. Selling price, I think that would make sense, the price retailers charge customers. Cost is the price the retailer pays to bring that into the store. Markup, margin, or gross profit. So this is just the difference between the cost of the goods and the selling price of the goods. So that amount that you get by subtraction is going to be your markup, your margin, your gross profit, whatever one you want to call it. I think we're going to call it mostly markup. Operating expenses or overhead, we're really not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but it's the regular expenses of doing business, such as wages, rent, utilities, insurance, advertising. Net profit or net income. This is the profit remaining after you subtract out the cost of the goods and then operating expenses. All right, so let's look at the basic selling price formula. It's the selling price equals the cost plus the markup. Now, when we say the markup here, we're talking about the markup amount in dollars. And so you'll see as we work through this section and the next that there are going to be some things that we will be calculating with this. And so in this case, we can see that the amount of the markup is $5. That's the dollar markup. And you basically can just take your selling price and subtract your costs to find this dollar amount of the markup. So this is talking about the percent part of this. So if the cost is 100% and the markup's 27.78%, then the selling price is 127.78%, and that would be like of the cost, right? So this is kind of related to our portion basin rate, and that's just a quick view of that you can see that each one of these, right, the cost would be the base, the markup would be the portion, and the percent on the cost is the rate. And so you remember that circle we use for that portion basin rate, and the percent always applies to the base. Okay, so we're going to do some calculating here. It says calculating dollar markup and percent markup on cost. So they gave us cost of $16.80, selling price is $22.50. We're going to find the dollar markup and the percent markup. Okay, so the dollar amount of the markup is going to be a subtraction. And I'm writing this out because I don't want you to start being confused about percents and amounts, right? We've talked about this before. You kind of have to keep that straight in your head, right? So if we take $22.50 and we subtract $16.80, then we see that that's $5.70. So that's the amount of the markup, $5.70. And then the percent of the markup, and remember that's on cost, that is going to be the amount of the markup divided by the cost, because remember we're saying the percent markup on the cost. So if it says on the cost, you divide by the cost. If you know the amount of the markup and you know the cost, then this is an easy calculation. Now, when you calculate this, you're going to get 0.393 something. I didn't write down what was after that, and that will be 33.93%. I didn't really say what to round to, so I rounded to the nearest hundredth, right? Nearest hundredth. I might want to spell that right, so I need a D in there. Nearest hundredth percent, right? So remember, we don't round until after we put it in percent form when we're rounding to the tenths or the hundredths of a percent. All right, here's our next example. So let's read through this. Sachi Wong, store manager for Hawk Appliance, does not know how to price a GE dishwasher that costs the store $2.99. So that means we know cost equals $299. Sometimes it's good to write these things out because it helps you understand. Sashi knows her boss wants a 40% markup on cost. All right, so 40% markup on cost. These are things that you have to know in order to calculate in this chapter. Can you help Sashi price the dishwasher? Okay, so we want to know, right? She says that she does not know how to price it so that she can sell it. It costs the store the $2.99. That's how we know it's the cost. So we are looking for the selling price, right? That's what we're trying to find here. Now, there are different ways to get there. Notice I have a thing on here, the checking of that, but I'm going to show you kind of how to set up an equation. Now, for some of you, this may be good, and for some of you, you may not like it. And so there, as you can see, the check is another way to go about this, where you're basically adding the percents and then multiplying times the cost. The problem that I find with this is students keeping this all straight. For me, setting up the equation, I can always keep everything straight. Like, what am I multiplying by? What am I dividing by? And that kind of thing. And so when I set up my markup, this means the markup amount. So there's actually two parts to this portion of the equation. All right, so let's just go this way. So my selling price is equal to the cost, and we already listed that that was $2.99. It's a 40% markup on cost, so we're going to add 40% of that $2.99. Now when I put parentheses, that means to multiply the 0.4 times $2.99. When I do that, I get my amount of markup. So $119.60, and we see that selling price will be $418.60. And that's what we were looking for. Can't get my decimal to look right in there. Or something else is going on. Let me get that out of there. I don't know. So $418.60. Now we can check that because we can also go with this. The cost times, the cost is $2.99. times 1 plus the percent markup, so that is going to be 1 plus 0.4, so 1.4. So if we multiply it by 1.4, which is 140%, we're going to get that same answer. Because notice here, this is 100%, this is the 40%. So you can see that it's 140% of the cost gives us the selling price. When we check it, we're going to get the same thing. $418.60. All right, let's see what's next here. Okay, Front Range Cabinet Distributors in Colorado Springs, Colorado sells its contractors with a 38% markup on cost. If the selling price for cabinets is $9,475, what is the cost to contractors based on cost? Now when it says it's based on cost, that's because the markup is on the cost. Round to the nearest cent, check your answer, and I've given you a little formula here that you can check your answer with. Once again, I'm going to set this up with the equation because I feel like with the equation you can always end up telling what you can do. I don't care how you solve these, but you have to be able to show, here's how I got this. Okay. Sometimes you go off in the wrong direction, so you must be careful. So notice here, selling price is $9,475, right? And our markup is on cost, so it's a 38% markup on cost. Okay, so now we're going to set up an equation. So my equation is this: selling price equals cost plus markup. Okay, so let's go over here. Selling price is $9,475. That's going to be equal to the cost, which we don't know. That's what we're looking for. Maybe I should say that up here. And so we're going to say the cost plus 0.38 times the cost. We could put parentheses there or a C. So this means 1C. And this is the one little part of algebra that we do in this class, is setting up these equations, but you can also use the formula. So really you can go at this either way. And so we've got 9,475. We add these together. These are called like terms. 1 plus 0.38 is 1.38. So if you do happen to be familiar with algebra, that will help you here. Now notice I'm going to divide by 1.38, and look at what this formula is telling me to do. Take the selling price, divide it by 1 plus the percent markup on cost. So the check is right there. We would be doing the very same thing, right? So it would be the 1.38. So when we divide this, we get 6,865.94. We just naturally round this to dollars and cents, and that's our cost. Now, cost should always be the smaller number. Selling price should be the larger number, and that's going to be true every time. So you want to be sure that you are paying attention on that and you don't end up with something backward. All right, here's the next one. The item is an iPad. The cost is $650. The markup percent is 15% on cost. This one's a pretty straightforward one, right? You can say, okay, markup and the dollar markup and selling price is what we're finding. To find the dollar markup, you can just take your cost and we can multiply it by 0.15. Now you notice I'm not setting up an equation, and I could set up an equation for this, right? Because I could set up the selling price equation that says my cost plus my markup amount. So I kind of found the markup amount separate from the equation and then just wrote it in. And when you've got the cost and you know the markup on the cost, it is a more simple kind of calculation, I guess I should say. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to stop this video. We just have a few more examples, and then we'll finish on the second video.